Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to another episode of Coffee Chats. Of course, I'm Kyra Dawkins, and I'm joined with the incredible, ever iconic Mackenzie Finklea.
Hello.
I'm so happy to be with you guys today. I actually do have a beverage check. My 15-year-old little brother was actually trusted with the blender, and he made me a smoothie. So, yeah, I feel particularly loved today.
Emotional support water bottle.
Yes, absolutely. What is life without an emotional support water bottle, truly? But as we launch into today's episodes, we're so excited to have Lilian with us. She is a PR coach, and as you guys know, within the authorverse, it's one thing to write the darn book. It's another thing to let the world know that it exists. So we're so excited to have Lilian here today to help us navigate that space from the perspective of an actual publicist. So, without further ado, dramatic drum roll, please. Dun, dun, dun. Lilian,
Hi, Kyra. Hey, Mackenzie. Thanks for having me.
thank you so much for being here. So, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure, I'm Lilian. I'm a longtime PR coach and publicist, and I work with authors to empower them to build the confidence that they need to learn how to use the right tools, platforms, and skills to learn how to launch their own PR campaigns. And I do this through my strategic coaching intensive sessions. I have an 8-week coaching program, a PR course, free journals, and I've also done master classes in addition to my own campaign services, helping to lead authors throughout all of this. And on a daily and weekly basis, I'm always on Instagram posting tips and strategies and tricks and that, and just talking to authors about, hey, like, how are you doing? Where is everybody at? Like, what questions do you have, and what sort of things can I help you with?
Well, thank you so much for that introduction because I think that that gives us a really strong foundation for the kinds of questions we're going to ask you and the things we're going to explore today. So, to sort of kick things off with our first question, and you kind of already pressed into the list a little bit, describing what your expertise is, but what are some of the core components of an effective publicity plan for an author or campaign?
Mhm. In order to start with building a campaign, there's essentially three things authors really need to focus on. That's mindset, positioning and goals, and the strategy itself. So I'm going to dig into a little bit of each one of those for you guys. Mindset is really key because a lot of the authors I speak to on a daily basis all kind of have the same sort of fears and trepidations around PR. There are myths that they buy into, things like, oh, as an indie author, I'm never going to qualify for publicity because I don't have thousands of people in my audience, right? And a lot of that believing in these myths comes from the fact that they, as I'm sure you know, a lot of authors and creative entrepreneurs have imposter syndrome. There's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of self-doubt that goes into being an author. And in order to really make it in publicity, you need to have a clear mindset of digging into, why do I feel this way? What are my fears around publicity? How can I push myself beyond that? On a weekly basis, actually every Monday, I do mindset posts where I talk about a lot of these fears like imposter syndrome, stress, anxiety, frustration that can come up that can block them from moving forward with the strategy. As you're working on your mindset, the other part that's really important is positioning. And positioning is really important because there are thousands of authors that write in the same genre, right? So it's not enough to just say, hey, I'm a romance author. Hey, I'm a sci-fi author. There's thousands of people that fit that too. Positioning has to do with getting introspective with your author's journey and with the origins of your book. Why did you become an author? What inspired you to do it? Why did you write this particular book? What are some of the central themes around this book? And when they have a solid hold on their positioning, that really forms the bedrock, the foundation of an effective PR strategy, because when you know who you are, why you do what you do, and how you do it, it makes it a lot easier to do things like answer those questions in an interview, as an example, right? So positioning is the second core component that's really important. Along with that, that also informs an effective publicity strategy is your goals. I've talked to a ton of authors over the years that have said, I want to sell more books. That's great. Everybody wants to sell more books. That in and of itself is not a goal. You have to be willing to get more specific. And for authors that get overwhelmed with goal planning and everything, I say to them, break it down. 3 months, 6 months, a year. What do you want to do to really get your book out there? How do you want to get in front of the right audiences? Once you have an idea of what you want to do, then it makes it that much easier to go in and build the strategy part of it. And the strategy component of all this is putting together all of the building blocks. So your media kit, so the email pitches that you're going to send out to the media in order to get those reviews and those interviews. So the media list, so that you actually know you are getting out in front of the right people. So to build an effective PR campaign, you really need to have all three of these areas in place: your mindset, your positioning with your goals, and your strategy before you start. Because if you don't have any of this, then you're not going to get in front of the right people. And what's more, you're not going to feel good about getting in front of the right people. And it's going to show up in any kind of publicity or interviews or anything like that that you choose to do.
So what would you say is the key difference in attitude that you've seen between indie authors and those with a major publishing house behind them?
It's interesting that you say that, because what I've found is that in a lot of cases, even those that have worked with publishers, marketing is kind of the one component, more often than not, that ends up being optional. So depending on the publisher and depending on what your genre is and whether or not they have room for you, you may not get that marketing support. So what I've discovered is that a lot of authors who still end up working with a publisher end up having to learn a lot about how to navigate the world of marketing, not just PR, but also email marketing and social media as well, on their own. And the really key difference in attitude between someone who is ready for publicity versus someone who is not. The authors that I love talking to and that really benefit from what I share on a daily basis on social media are the ones who are like, you know what? I'm willing to learn. I want that education. I want to get out there and try different things to learn how to make this work for myself, even if there's no guarantee that it's going to work the first time out, because I understand that doing nothing is not going to get me to where I need to go. And that is kind of the key attitude and the key mindset beliefs of the people that I speak to that really sort of benefit from publicity, because they understand the power of getting themselves out there, and they want to learn how to continue to do that better. And that's really sort of the attitude that I think you need in order to really and truly succeed in publicity, and understand that even if you choose to work with someone like me or a PR firm, that better education will help you learn how to better advocate for your books, what your goals are, where you want to go.
As a quick follow-up question to that, and I actually started to think about this when we were sort of talking about positioning in particular, but something that we talk about with the authors in our ecosystem is the idea that some people have a tendency to lead, like in terms of like their branding, to lead with the books that they write versus the thought leadership that they have. Some people are more book forward and some people are more author forward. Do you think that is something that's very important to know at the outset of those three things, or is that something that comes, or something that becomes more clear as you make other decisions?
Well, it really, the answer to this question is kind of twofold in my mind, because there's a lot of authors who don't feel comfortable with the thought leadership component at all, because their belief is, why can't I just lead with the books that I write? Why can't it just be about that? Why do I have to share anything about myself and my journey? And I tell authors who feel that way that people don't just buy into what you write because you wrote it. They want to learn more about you and what inspires you as well. It's really about that, like, just putting the product out there is not enough. They want to learn more about the story behind it, because people buy stories and they buy into things because they connect with the people behind it. It's not just the product itself, right? So, and for authors who don't have publicity experience, I often tell them that it's easier because there are many facets of PR, and being book forward is one of them. Being author forward and thought leadership forward is another part of it. When you get used to publicity, you can often combine both those focuses into one campaign to increase the opportunities you have, to increase awareness of your book, and to increase the types of relationships you build. But for authors who don't have a ton of experience with publicity, I always tell them, okay, with your goals, what do you want to prioritize first? Are you looking to kind of build your reputation as an industry leader, as somebody that people can learn from, as kind of the go-to person for certain topics or platforms or areas when it comes to writing or editing or publishing? Is that more of a priority for you? And do you want to kind of, in a roundabout way, sell your books through building your author reputation? Or do you want to focus more on, I want to get those reviews, I want to get those interviews in addition to those reviews, I want to get those live reading opportunities so people can really hear from me what the book is about? So I think that it really sort of depends on where they want to prioritize their goals. There's certainly being more thought leadership forward doesn't mean that that's the wrong way to do things. Both being book forward and thought leadership forward, the end goal of it is to raise awareness of you as an author, raise awareness of your books, increase sales, and build your reputation as an industry leader, right? So there's no wrong way to go about it. It's just, where are your goals and how do you want to prioritize them?
And the big question is, how early on in the book writing journey do you start?
I think that as you're writing, there can often be, to sort of minimize the amount of time that you need, because I also tell authors, the last thing you want to do is to start thinking about this stuff when your book launch is like a week to 2 weeks out. That's way too late. Because just like with any other aspect of building a marketing strategy, you want to give yourself enough time to do this. You want to give yourself enough time to really brainstorm and think about, where do I want to go? Who do I want to reach out to? And you also want to give people time, right? Because of course, as you know, when you are getting book reviews and everything, a lot of these things take weeks, if not months, to go live. So if you want to get interviews and everything, you cannot send someone an email and expect a response that same day. So I always counsel authors, if you're looking at thinking about building PR into your marketing strategy for your book launch and beyond, you can't, there really is no too early to think about it. I think it's a great way to start thinking about it as your book is with beta readers and you're sort of on the road to getting it finished and getting it formatted and you have the cover design ready to go. It's really kind of time to start thinking about, what do I want to do? Who do I want to reach out to? And how can I keep the momentum going for me and for my books in a way that's going to help me stay top of mind with audiences? Because I think, traditionally speaking, in the industry, there is a ton of focus on launches, and rightfully so. It is important. I'm not disagreeing there. But what they kind of fail to realize is that a week, 2 weeks, even months after your book launch is over, your audience is constantly evolving and changing. You're going to have people come across your book that were not there when you launched. So the best way to stay top of mind even after a launch is to look at how you can continue to get these thought leadership opportunities, get these interviews, get these reviews, and continue to share them through your platform so that people know that you are still active, that it's not just about, oh, the launch is over, I'm only going to talk about my book when it's on sale, right? It's about staying top of mind by letting them know that you're still out there building this credibility for yourself and for your books through the relationships you build with all of these different media platforms.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, and on that line of cultivating relationships with media platforms, how do you brainstorm which platforms to contact? Like, I'd imagine that alignment is very important.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. This actually plays directly into a popular myth that exists in PR, and a lot of authors have bought into this too, and that is they seem to think that bigger automatically means better. So they're like, oh, if I have no mainstream PR experience, I can contact major newspapers, I can contact talk shows, I can get on these. And I tell them, I'm like, what you're doing in that situation when you don't have experience is banking on a 1 in a million Hail Mary shot to go viral. That almost never happens. So if you don't have publicity experience, I always counsel them to follow this framework. First, go genre specific, then local, then international. Because within genre specific, you've got hundreds, if not thousands, of your podcasts, online websites, blogs, YouTube shows. And with the genre specific platforms, that's where your readers are going to be. The readers you want to connect with are going to be paying attention to these podcasts, to these YouTubers that do book reviews, and that's who you want to get your book out in front of. Once you've kind of mastered genre specific, and that's not just what your book genre is, that's also other authors that have interview shows, other podcasts that focus on things like writing craft, or wanting to talk to you about like your self-publishing journey, things like that. Cutting your teeth in that area gives you an opportunity to A, get comfortable pitching the media, B, get comfortable learning how to do interviews, and C, you build these key media relationships that you can always come back to when you have another book to release, or maybe some of these smaller outlets, a writer from there might end up working for a major national publication. Guess what? When you want to pitch that national publication, now you have that relationship.
So yeah, you want to strengthen the pitch and avoid, just sending the Hail Mary. Mm-hmm. What sort of tips? You were kind of starting to go down this road. So like, what sort of tips do you have for authors to help them strengthen shooting their shot?
Definitely research. That is priority number one when it comes to looking at who you're going to contact. Because a lot of times it's not just enough to say, oh, this person writes in my genre or he reviews books in my genre. You really want to look at, okay, have they talked to somebody similar recently? Because if they have, chances are they're not going to want to cover your book right away. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. It's why I always say when you're building your list of media contacts, it's always more advantageous to have more people than less. Because if you only have 5 people on there, you're always going to have to be going back to that research and consistently doing it. So the more time you spend building an actual robust list that you can pull from when you're ready to pitch, the less work you have to do down the road. And the same thing goes for local media. It's not enough just to say, hey, I'm from the same city. You have to look at it and go, if I want this news station to bring a camera out to cover my author signing, let's say, what are the kinds of things that they're going to want to pay attention to, right? Because they need that visual component. So really sort of thinking about in each area, what are the things that I can put into my pitch that will position my book the right way that they're going to want to jump on it, and research into who these guys are, what they cover, who they've talked to recently will really kind of help you figure out, okay, should I pitch this person today or should I wait a couple months because they've covered something similar?
And as a follow-up question, sort of in the vein of talking to media outlets or how to strengthen shooting your shot, not unfortunately, but as a part of life, rejection is somewhat inevitable. And I guess at what point should authors start to question whether it's the pitch that needs strengthening versus it just not being a good fit for the media outlet they pitched it to? Where's the balance there?
I tend to counsel authors to look at it as, okay, if you haven't, it's very, very rare, first of all, that you will get a response the first time out. People are busy. Sometimes they'll miss your email. If you don't get a response by the 3rd or 4th time, though, I would stop connecting with them for this particular pitch and just move on. I know that getting that rejection, or worse, not hearing back at all is tough. You start to think whether or not, am I even utilizing my time the right way? And I understand that. But the beauty of building a PR pitch is that you don't have to just bank getting a yes from one outlet. I've been in this business for 15 years, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that you almost never can predict where you're going to get that interest from. And you can maybe not hear from, 10 outlets, but you might hear back from 5. And that's where you can really kind of build those positive relationships that will stay with you no matter how many books you release. And in addition to, you're not just sitting around and waiting for media responses during a PR campaign. There's so many other things that you can be doing to get word out there. You could be collaborating with other authors for live events. You could be, here's a big one, that a lot of authors overlook, reaching out to industry associations that say your book has grief as a centralized theme. Reaching out to grief associations and building relationships with them for talks, for author signings, and all of that sort of thing, to really kind of diversify how you're getting out there and the people you're connecting with. It's not just about that one outlet that you've pitched today.
So another question that Mackenzie and I kind of are like, because as authors ourselves, we're constantly wondering, okay, so how much should we integrate PR activities, engaging with PR experts, and sort of cultivating like marketing in the general routine of authorship? Like,
how much time and for how long too? Because we've been told like you're considered a new author for the first 2 years that your book is out, and to milk that for as long as possible. But so in your professional opinion, how often is the good cadence to incorporate it into your schedule, and then for how long?
Yeah.
I would say that I always counsel authors to break these kinds of tasks down into smaller chunks. So it can vary from week to week. If this week all you have is an hour to research into the right people that you want to connect with, then take that hour, right? If you have a little bit more time than that and you're like, hey, I think today I can send out 5 pitches and feel good about that, then do that. And as terms of for how long, when it comes to a launch, I recommend that authors start pitching at least 4 to 6 weeks out, to give the media outlets enough time to schedule reviews and to schedule interviews and schedule any kind of media events that you might want to do with them. So 4 to 6 weeks out if you're doing a launch. Outside of that, if your book has been out for a couple months, let's say, and you want to maybe focus more so on thought leadership opportunities this time around, then it's really on a rolling basis. And if it's on a rolling basis, then it becomes a question of, okay, on a weekly basis, can I devote maybe a couple hours? Because once you have the elements of your campaign ready to go, so your media kit, your media pitches, your media list, those are the kinds of things that will stay with you, and you don't have to update them all the time. You, let's say, only need to update them if you have a new book coming up. And so you can take those elements and use that to do PR on a rolling basis in between releases, if you so choose, to continue to get those interviews, to continue to get those reviews, to build up your thought leadership strategy and go, hey, like, now I'm writing guest posts, now I'm doing workshops, now I'm presenting for other aspiring authors at different festivals and conferences.
Another quick follow-up, because I think you're already like touching on this with what you just said, but you mentioned particularly on like a rolling basis how it's important, like people could choose to have a consistent cadence for social media and PR activities. But I've also seen some authors sort of like do a major surge of like content around anniversaries, around sales. Would you encourage consistency over surges? Are there benefits to both? Is it like case by case?
Or just like whatever works for you?
Yeah.
I think it really is a case by case basis, but the question of consistency comes up a ton when it comes to marketing, because a lot of authors kind of feel pressured to like show up every day or to, post several times a day. And I always say to them, a lot of this consistency is up to you to define how it works for you. So if consistency to you is showing up a couple times a week, stick with that, because that's what works for you. I will say, though, that it isn't a good look to be pitching for media coverage, any kind of media coverage, and to not have been on your social media platforms and been active for months. Because the media, when they're looking at you, they are looking for somebody who not only has a passionate audience and who has a book that they think is compelling, that they support and they want their audiences to support. They want to make sure you're active and that you have some idea of what you're talking about with them, right? So to consistency is really up to the individual author to kind of define for themselves on what works for them. But I will say that it doesn't pay to be doing media outreach and to not have anything content-wise, anything new to talk about for months.
This is very helpful and insightful. We've kind of in the last several coffee chats been talking about PR from the perspective of multiple different places, from an author and from you, the publicity professional. And so as I kind of ask this, one of our final prepared questions for you here, I do want to encourage people in the chat to ask their questions if they have any remaining ones. But while you're reflecting on this one, are there any moments in your publicist career that you're particularly proud of?
I would say that every time I coach a client to push past because the biggest roadblock is not even so much understanding the tools or understanding the different skills that you need. It's the limiting beliefs and the mindset blocks. So every time we're sitting there brainstorming during a coaching call and I see that light bulb go off, that's where I feel like, this is why I love doing what I do. And that is something that I'm really proud of in terms of what I do and why I do it. It reminds me the impact that great education and personalized guidance can really empower people to kind of take the reins for themselves. I think every time I see my clients get the results that they want, to raise that awareness, to get those great reviews. Every single great review that they get, every interview, that is a great win for me because I've helped them get there. So for me, it's just about really empowering people to get the results that they want.
Well, I mean, I think that was really encouraging to hear because I know that, I mean, you are a publicity professional, and I think sometimes, particularly me as an author, and Mackenzie can probably relate to this, and other authors inside of our ecosystem can relate to this, but sometimes it's hard to not get caught up, not just in the limiting beliefs and the imposter syndrome that you face for yourself, but then there's also like the temptation to fall into like comparison of, oh, well, here's my goal. Am I selling myself too short? Am I thinking too highly of myself, et cetera, et cetera? So the fact that the part of your work that you find most fulfilling is for authors rising to the potential that they set for themselves instead of trying to impose on them what is good.
It's really, you can only find success in this area if you really sort of focus on what it is you want to do for you. Because everyone's goals for their books are different. Everyone's needs for their books are different. Everyone's comfort level and kind of where they are with their education is different. So it's really about focusing on what works for me. Because the moment you start to fixate on what someone else is doing and the results that they've gotten, you don't see the behind the scenes stuff that they went through to get to that point, to gain those results. And the moment you fixate on what someone else is doing is kind of where you lose the plot of your own strategy and where you should be headed.
We've got a great question in the chat here because you've been giving a lot of great information. Mm-hmm. How can they contact you for your services in the future?
You can definitely find me on Instagram at Lilian Sue, copywriter PR. That's all one word. I can pop that in the chat really quick as well. Or you can go to my website in Retrospect Writing Services. publicist.com. But Instagram is probably where I'm the most active on a daily basis, posting tips, strategies, talking to authors on a daily basis about what they're up to and everything else. You can definitely follow me there, and we can chat about where you're at in your journey, what you're stuck on, and how I can help.
Can you give us a little taste of what kinds of things you might do with an author who reaches out for help?
Sure. First things first is just getting into conversations about where they're at. And sometimes that leads to a free discovery call. On the free discovery call, I talk to authors a lot about where you're at with your books, what your goals are, where's your current marketing strategy, what have you tried that's worked, what have you tried that hasn't worked, where are you actually looking to go, what do you sort of want out of publicity? And what I mean by that is, do you want more of the educational component? Do you want the personalized guidance to learn how to do it yourself? Or are you looking for more of someone who's an expert to actually do a campaign for you? From there, that usually kind of segues into what looks better for you. Do you want more of that coaching component? Do you want something that's more self-directed with a course? Do you want more of the campaign services? And throughout all of that, or maybe what you're looking for is more of a combination of both coaching and campaign. And throughout all of that, it's really about clarifying with the author about, what your goals are, where do you feel comfortable, what's your desires in terms of what you want to learn, because my ultimate goal, no matter how an author works with me, whether it's through coaching, whether it's taking my course, whether it's through campaign services, is really about leaving them better off than they were when they started. Because I've seen so many authors who, some of them have gone through publicity experiences, come out the other side and went, yeah, I lost all my momentum after working with an agency because I didn't understand how to keep it going for myself. And that is a goal of mine, to never leave my clients hanging, no matter how they choose to work with me.
Well, I mean, I feel encouraged after this conversation, especially as it pertains to knowing that there are PR professionals like you who have the heart to really empower authors to do what they find to be best for themselves, but also lend the expertise to guide in the right direction is exceedingly helpful. So I'm sure that our audience would particularly love to know if you have any final words of wisdom for us.
I would say that if you are looking at doing publicity, take it one step at a time, one building block at a time. Because if there's anything that you have that's on your side in relation to building a PR campaign, it's time. So take it because you have it, and rushing will not get you in front of the right people the right way.
Wow, beautifully said. Thank you so much, Lilian.
Thanks again for having me. I hope it's been insightful for your audience, and anyone who has any questions is always welcome to contact me.
I mean, it was insightful for me.
Yeah, very helpful. Thank you so much again for your time, Lilian.
Oh, absolutely. Happy to do it.
All right, beautiful people. That was just another wonderful coffee chat episode. I mean, mind-boggling if you ask me. But if you guys have any questions,
I really appreciated all three. Before we go into closing, I do really appreciate all three different perspectives that we've gotten over the course of the last 3 weeks. So if you are happening upon this video and you want to see more information and different perspectives about publicity, go ahead and watch the last 2 videos, coffee chats before this one.
Definitely.
You were saying.
So all of this is to say, thank you so much for joining us today. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, confessions, have any ideas for what else you'd like to see on the coffee chat, suggest a topic below, ask your questions below. We do, in fact, read them. We do, in fact, engage, and we'd love to see it. So do not hesitate to do so. Next week, we're actually going to be talking about how to leverage book clubs, how to design book clubs, how to get your book into book clubs. And that'll be a fun conversation because who doesn't love book clubs?
Yeah.
So with all of that being said, beautiful people, I hope, Mackenzie and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are, however it is in your part of the world.
Thanks for stopping by.